to the delegation of Albania.
Honorable Chairperson, fellow delegates, it's with great honor that we address this committee as the Youth Delegates of Albania. Just as the world was beginning to build back better from the challenges that COVID-19 brought forward, we are facing a conflict that has unraveled our common determination of never again, with consequences not only felt in our region but throughout all the world. All wars are devastating, but none more than wars of choice that threaten a country's sovereignty, territorial integrity, and willfully cause harm to its civilians. Reinforcing Albania's stance on the Security Council, we strongly condemn the actions of the government of the Russian Federation and the unprovoked and unjustified attacks of its military. Our thoughts remain with the Ukrainian people, with the families of the victims, young people, and more than 300 children who have lost their lives, especially those faced with the atrocities of the Bucha massacre and the worst consequences of Russia's military attacks. Once again, we are reminded that in the face of conflict, young people and children remain powerless, often being relegated to the role of a victim, a bystander, and in its worst cases, a perpetrator of violence. That's why the role of young people should be recognized as a critical prerequisite to building sustainable peace. We call on the UN member states to center the youth peace and security agenda, emphasizing young people's agency and leadership through its priorities. Navigating the new post-pandemic reality while facing the consequences of violent conflicts and climate change has put young people in a very difficult mental position, yet mental health remains one of the most neglected areas of health. In general, the greatest barrier youth face in reaching out for help is the lack of accessible quality mental health services in schools and communities, leaving them in an isolated and vulnerable condition. Henceforth, we believe addressing the gaps present in service delivery through target investment policies will play a key role in promoting youth mental health and enable them to live healthier lives. Fellow delegates, while there is much to be done in regard to our common challenges, we must not forget to celebrate our progress too. Albania marked two important milestones regarding youth this year. Firstly, our capital, Tirana, started the implementation of the European Youth Capital 2022 awarded by the European Youth Forum. This title means that special funding has to be allocated in order to support initiatives coming from and for young people. More than 1,000 activities will be delivered until the end of the year, while skills and capacities are built for the years to come. The second important milestone would be drafting of the National Youth Strategy 2022-2029. While makes this process an achievement is not the final result per se, but rather the journey. 45 youth-oriented NGOs and more than 1,200 children and youth from 22 municipalities were able to give their contributions at writing the first draft, making this a youth strategy coming from youth and for youth.
Honorable Chair, the Secretary General's Transforming Education Summit, among other important takeouts, taught us that education should not be about learning facts, but rather the training of mind to think. A lesson that Albert Einstein called around 100 years ago, but the world chose not to follow. Taking advantage of the momentum that the summit created, the world must not make the same mistake twice. Albanian children and youth are pushing for this as well. As in a new report questionnaire asked recently, 44% of them marked education and transition to employment as their biggest challenge, and 49% of them asked for contemporary curricula that are based on the needs of the labor market. This updated curriculum should be able to build digital, soft, and lifelong skills. Let's teach children and youth communication, including social justice and emotional learning. Let's teach children and youth political and democratic literacy. How do you write an official complaint? How do you start a petition? How many signatures do you need for it to work in your municipality? And how do you submit it? These knowledges would help to raise a new generation of active citizens that know how to use democracy processes in their interest. Let's teach children and youth media and information literacy so they can understand, evaluate, and correctly use the information found in books, TV, or social media, as this is crucial in the 21st century of fake news, misleading data, and biased propaganda. We all took all of the above for granted as something that you have to learn by yourself and learn later in life, only to find out that we were late to learn. These measurements require substantial increase on the investment in education. Honorable Chair, we are living in a time of interconnected and cascading challenges that we all face, but we don't experience in the same way. We are also living in an extraordinary time full of vital and transformative movements that are all aspiring to the same vision, a vision of the world that is sustainable, peaceful, and inclusive. This better world requires much more than just coexistence. It needs ways for us to live cooperatively. So let's cooperate for the decade of transformation, the decade where we put humanity and our planet first. For all those whose humanity is constantly denied, for all those whose existence is ignored, and for us, the children and young people, the moral compass of the present who will be here in the future to live the consequences of decisions made way before we existed. Let this be not only our demand and our plea, but also our collective resolve. We thank you for your attention.